Well, hey everyone, welcome to this short video session today with Dr. David Watson. And my name is Matt Reynolds. I serve as the president of Spirit and Truth. We're a church renewal and equipping ministry. And I'm here with Dr. Watson, who is on our board of directors for Spirit and Truth, but serves primarily as the academic dean at United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio. And we're here today because we've got a really exciting announcement. We've been so excited to be able to share this with you that coming up on June the 1st, we're launching a brand new online magazine called Firebrand. And you'll be able to find that new publication at firebrandmag.com. And it's a free online magazine. So we're pumped about this. We've been working hard to get this ready to go. And we're excited to share it with you. Before we jump into the details, just a couple of quick things. Three ways that you should follow this so that you can make sure you're in the loop with everything. One, on the links that are to this within this video post, like the Facebook page, go to at Firebrand Mag on Twitter and follow us on Twitter. And then probably most importantly, click the link to subscribe to our email list so that you can get the new content and articles right in your inbox as things are published. So make sure you follow us in all three of those ways before you get off this today, so that you're getting all the new stuff that's coming your way. So David, this is an exciting day to be able to share that
Yeah,
this is coming up.
yeah, it is exciting.
You know, you're the lead editor for Firebrand, and you've been I'd call you the chief instigator of this whole thing. And I wondered if you could just share with us kind of two basic questions to begin with. Number one, what is Firebrand? And two, why do you sense a need for this kind of online magazine?
Firebrand is, as you said, it's an online magazine, but it's really focused on the Wesleyan tradition and intellectual discourse in the Wesleyan tradition. It's not a scholarly journal. It's not something like Methodist Review. It is pitched maybe at the level of a magazine like First Things or Touchstone, something like that. And we will receive submissions, and we do have an editorial board that will make decisions about those. But really, Firebrand is a place to have for people in the various Wesleyan traditions, not just the UMC, but really anyone who is strongly influenced by Wesley or members of churches that trace their roots back to Wesley. You know, for people in these churches to have kind of high level discussions about matters of faith and practice. You know, what does our faith mean? How do we live it? What are the ethical implications of our faith? Um, and so we have different categories of topics like Bible and church history and Christian living and things like this. I just sensed a need for this. I think that in the Reformed tradition, they've done a really good job of getting their message out there in public and having a lot of different venues where you can learn about the faith from their perspective. And I mean, they really go in depth with these things. These are not light discussions. And groups like the Gospel Coalition, for example, have done a lot of work in this regard, and they've made a lot of progress. In the Roman Catholic tradition, you have a venue like First Things, for example, and there are other venues as well. Um, it's more difficult to find that kind of venue within Methodism. Certainly, we do have some really good publications. I really like Catalyst, for example. I think Ministry Matters puts out some good things, but there's nothing quite like what we're envisioning with Firebrand. And so I think for some people, this is going to be kind of hitting the sweet spot of where they want to frame their discussions among the spiritual children of Wesley.
Yeah, amen. Tell us, you mentioned the editorial board. Tell us a little bit more about that, because as we've been putting this together over the last month or two, um, you've really recruited an incredible group of scholars representing many institutions across the country. So I want to share a few of the folks that are involved and kind of how you put that team together.
Well, the assistant lead editor is Dr. Suzanne Nicholson. currently at Malone University, but she will be moving to Asbury University in the fall. She just accepted a position there. Um, but we have a lot of other people on the editorial board. Um, for example, uh, my friend Joy Moore is on the board, um, and Jason Vickers is on the board. Ryan Danker. Um, it's a fairly diverse board. We have Elvin Sadler, who is the I forget his exact title, but he's a high-ranking officer in the AME Zion
Yeah,
tradition.
general secretary, I think, right?
Yeah, general secretary. Yeah, in the AME Zion Church. We got a lot of good people
Yeah.
on the board, and they're not all academics. We have lay people, we have pastors, and so I think we'll have a good representation of people to whom we can send out articles for review and editing as they arrive.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been encouraged. Just a lot of folks whose voices I really respect who have said, "Yeah, I want to be a part of this kind of vision." Jessica Grown is one of them.
Yeah,
Kevin Watson is a part of that board. Scott Kisker. I mean,
yeah,
there's a incredible group of folks that have come together. Um, Beth Felker Jones, right, is
yeah. Let me just find this real quick so I can um, just list off who's on this board so we don't leave anyone out. Suzanne Nicholson, Ryan Danker, Beth Belker Jones, Scott Kisker, Doug Coskella, Jessica Legrone, Joy Moore, Tapiwa Mucharera, Elvin Sadler, Maggie Ulmer, Jason Vickers, and Kevin Watson.
yeah. Yeah, those are some really key voices in our tradition, and it's cool to see people from different sort of pockets who kind of share a similar heart coming together for a project like this. I think that's really encouraging.
Yeah, and I want to say we're not finished building the board yet either. We still have some slots that we want to fill, and especially on the pastoral side, we're still kind of building that part up. But so far, I just really love working with this group, and I'm really excited for the work that they're going to produce.
Yeah, again, this is going to be launching June the 1st at firebrandmag.com. It's a free publication, so you won't need to have a paid subscription to access the content. But again, we encourage you to sign up with your email so that you can get notice when new articles are published. I wanted, if I could, I want to take us back a little bit to a couple of years ago. And I was realizing as we were preparing for this conversation, it was almost exactly maybe, within a week or so, we're exactly 2 years ago from when we had our first conversation that included this stuff at a Mexican restaurant in Dayton.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
So, we had been meeting for lunch for a number of months and talking about
yeah.
ministry and uh, theology stuff, UMC stuff, all of that.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, over tacos, I shared this idea. Just very briefly, I had been serving as a United Methodist pastor for about 13 years. And through a series of events, encounters with the Holy Spirit, and some really interesting stuff, God called me to work with a missionary ministry out of Texas where we were seeing just some new things of people coming to Christ and really helping churches get serious about evangelism and discipleship. And my heart just ached to see this kind of stuff that to me felt more Methodist than any Methodist thing I'd
Yeah,
ever done
yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah,
To
yeah.
see that kind of renewal infiltrate our own
Mm.
wing of the church. And one of your articles that you've got coming up, you mentioned there's over 80 million people
Right.
who are in churches tied with the Wesleyan tradition.
That's right. That's right. We in the UMC tend to think of the UMC as Methodism, but there are about 12.5 million United Methodists in the world. Um, at least 5 million of those are in Africa. But then throughout the world, as you said, there are 80 million Methodists, and so the vast majority of the people called Methodists worldwide are not United Methodists. It really is a very broad movement and a global movement.
Yeah. And so that day, I remember that morning I had woken up, and this may sound odd to people, but I just had God just kind of hit me over the head with this idea of taking some of the things I've been learning and seeing that were not really in the Methodist stream, and trying to be a catalyst to bring some of that back into the stream that shaped me and informed me for my whole life.
Hmm.
And we had a pre-scheduled a lunch that day, and so I had written all these notes. I came to lunch, and I just candidly, I thought, this is a stupid idea. Dr. David Watson, he's brilliant. He's got all, this is a dumb, I haven't even thought about this for more than about 3 or 4 hours. I can't just share it with him. I asked my wife, and she's like, yeah, I don't think I'd tell him that yet. But I remember the Spirit just prompting me, you've got to just share this with him. And I just kind of shared my heart with you. And I'll never forget how you responded. You said, I kind of shared it. I said, do you think I'm nuts? And you said, no, I don't think you're nuts. In fact, I think we need a ministry like that. And I've thought for a long time about starting a ministry, something like what you're describing. In fact, I would call it Spirit and Truth. And that's where the name came from, is from your recommendation that day.
Wow.
And almost so right at 2 years ago, that I looked back at my notes, that very first discussion, there were three parts that we talked about getting started as a part of Spirit and Truth. On the ground training with churches for evangelism and discipleship, which is kind of has been our bread and butter. Right now, we're kind of having to rethink that in this time of quarantine stuff, but kind of one of our major emphasis on online resources for Christians, and then an online journal for theological discussion around the vision and the
Yeah.
theological anchor of
Right.
our tradition. And that was in
Yeah.
that very first meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, God has really blessed Spirit and Truth, and uh, Matt, your leadership in Spirit and Truth has been spirit led. I mean, it's you're very clearly called and equipped for this ministry, and I just really am excited about everything Spirit and Truth is doing, and I feel really honored to be a part of it.
Well, you've been such a gift to this ministry, and it's as much your ministry as it is mine. I mean, we've kind of been in this together over these last couple of years.
From day one.
From day
Yeah.
one. And
Yes.
so in your one of your articles that's kind of launching Firebrand, that's going to be coming out on June the 1st, one of the things that you talk about in there is, why would a theological publication like this, so, maybe trending towards a little bit of a heady discussion, why would that be tied to a renewal ministry that's also, kind of on the streets helping people share Jesus and these kind of things
Yeah.
with Spirit and Truth? So could you share more about that? Because I love the connection of those two things, but share with the folks why you see those two things as related.
Well, I think that the work of renewal has to be tied to theology.
Hmm.
Um, the renewal of Methodism is in part going to be a theological renewal. And that means that we are, I mean, part of what we are after is a process of recovery. So we're trying to recover for today's church practices and theological ideas that to a certain extent have been lost now in Methodism. And so we want to kind of explore our own tradition and see, for example, the work that Kevin Watson and Scott Kisker have done on the band meeting. I think that's so important. And I see band meetings catching on throughout the church today, but we had abandoned those by and large, for a long time. And so just kind of digging down into our own tradition, probing its depths and saying, um, what have we lost? What do we need to recover? And what do we need to let go of? I think it's good to have public conversations about that.
Yeah.
Renewal that's not undergirded by clear theological principles is probably going to be short lived.
Mm.
If you read through Wesley's works, I mean, Wesley was not a systematic theologian, but his works are deeply theological. And the hymns of Charles Wesley are perhaps our greatest theological treasures. And Wesley did at times write theologically, specifically theologically oriented pieces on things like predestination. He also wrote specifically ethically oriented pieces on topics like slavery. And these these constructs that he was working with, these theological constructs that he was working with, did a lot of heavy lifting as he organized the Methodist movement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I love that. It brings to mind. I'm going to read a quote that I'm sure many of the folks listening have heard before. It's kind of a popular quote from Wesley, but for us, it's been kind of one of the things that's undergirded kind of the formation of Spirit and Truth. From 1786, Wesley wrote, kind of prophetically, I think. I'm not afraid that the people called Methodists should ever cease to exist, whether in Europe or America, but I am afraid lest they should only exist as a dead sect, having the form of religion without the power. And
Wow.
this undoubtedly will be the case unless they hold fast both the doctrine, spirit, and discipline with which they first set out.
Yeah,
And I love how Wesley brings together those three things: doctrine, spirit, and discipline. And that's part of what I see. That's been in the core vision of Spirit and Truth, in what we believe and teach, the spirit by which we live, and then the discipline, the actual stuff that we do, how we organize our Christian life. Those three things are inseparable. And I see Firebrand as a key resource for the church to help us rediscover what is it that we really believe and what should we
yeah,
teach. you
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. That process of, I mean, we don't want to have an overly valorized vision of early Methodism, but we want to take everything we can from the practices and beliefs and proclamation of early Methodism that will still bear fruit today. And there's a lot there.
yeah. Yeah, tell us. This is kind of interesting. You came up with the name Firebrand.
Hmm.
What does that name mean? Where did you come up with that?
I don't know. It just kind of hit me one day. But I think it's related to John Wesley describing himself as a brand plucked from the burning, and the kind of fire that he lit first in the English church, and then really spreading all around the world. I mean, the uh, by some accounts, the Methodist revival is the longest continuous revival in the history of the church. So Wesley kind of started a wildfire,
Yeah,
and I don't think he would have it any other way. I mean, I'm sure, that if he knew there were 80 million of if he were to have known that there would be 80 million Methodists, around the world today, that would probably um, cause him real joy
yeah,
and a sense of accomplishment. So that's kind of where it came from. I mean, it's rooted back to Wesley and what he did, but also, part of what we want to accomplish through Spirit and Truth, which is again to light that fire of
hmm
renewal in the church.
yeah. Amen. Yeah, we talk about our vision for what do we want to see in people as we're seeing renewal. We say empowered by the Spirit, rooted in the truth, and mobilized for the mission. It
Yeah,
kind of gets at that heart of doctrine, spirit, and discipline.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I think I've heard others say that about Wesley's, the revival that came out of early Methodism, sort of being the most sustained revival in Christian history. And I
Hmm.
think it's the beautiful combination of those things,
Hmm.
that it's deeply formed theologically, that it's well organized with class and band meetings for serious discipleship.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of other examples where you have revival and the Spirit breaking out in different ways that aren't undergirded by those things, and it kind of fizzles out much more quickly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Say a little bit more about the core values, because you and the editorial board have agreed on these four core values. I'll list them and then just have you share um, why you chose these: the
Okay.
authority of Scripture, the Nicene Chalcedonian faith, the Wesleyan tradition, and the cultivation of intellectual virtue. And
Yeah.
especially that last one, say a little bit more. How'd you land on those core values to guide this publication?
Well, again, we wanted to have discussion about the Wesleyan tradition, broadly speaking. You really can't honor Wesley if you don't also honor the authority of Scripture. I mean, he was just so clear about this in things that he wrote. Um, and this is recognizing, though, that we as Wesleyans stand within the Church Catholic, which is theologically, I think, a broad way to describe the Church Catholic is through the Nicene Chalcedonian faith, the Trinitarian incarnational faith that the Church has proclaimed through the centuries. Um, in terms of intellectual virtue, um, this is something that is just really missing in a lot of public discourse today. Uh, Fair play, for example, logical coherence in argumentation, empathy. In the world of blogs and social media, a lot of this has been lost. Now, I'm not saying you never find it. At times you do, but there's a lot more intellectual vice and intellectual virtue. And so we wanted to kind of stake out a particular way of arguing, that we're not interested in kind of the ad hoc arguments, or not ad hoc, ad hominem arguments that one so commonly finds in social media. We're not interested in angry screeds or something like that. We really do want to put out content that has intellectual power and is rooted in intellectual virtue, because we think that these are very important for advancing the work of the theological work of the church.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm excited about that because yeah, I do think it's rare in the online world today to find that. Um, for example,
It can be
you
hard to
talk a lot
find.
about when you're critiquing someone, presenting your understanding of their case in a way that they would think is fair,
Right, right, right.
uh, and that's just not the case in most of the blog Twitter
No,
world.
no, no. There's a lot of intellectual laziness
Yeah,
online, and that doesn't help us. I mean, when we caricature the arguments of our opponents, it really doesn't help us make intellectual progress.
yeah. And I think it matters to the mission, like what we understand about who God is and how we respond to God as humans. I mean, the kind of things that this is what theology is about. I mean, these things matter. What we believe matters, and it's not
Yeah,
just for folks that sit in an academic institution
right.
somewhere. These are the ideas that shape how we live everyday life.
Yeah, right. That the teachings of the church are in and of themselves a kind of means of grace.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we probably have to wrap things up for today, but I'm so excited about this, and I
Yeah,
want to
me
just
too.
say thank you for all your work and your willingness to spearhead this new venture called Firebrand, because
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a gift. I'm praying it's a real gift to the church. So,
Well, it's an honor to do it, Matt, and I'm glad to be partnering with you in it.
well, thanks, David. Another quick reminder for folks: 3 things that you ought to do right now. In fact, I'm going to give you a fourth one. Even one, follow us on Facebook with the Firebrand Mag. You'll see the link in the video post. Follow us on Twitter at Firebrand Mag, and then subscribe with your email to the link that's listed there, so that you can get all of the content when it comes out. Also, the fourth thing I would say is, would you help us by sharing this out? This is something brand new. We're starting from scratch. And so you could help us out a lot by just sharing this with your friends, posting it on your own social media, all of that kind of thing. One last thing I'll say too, we are looking for sponsors in order to make this kind of level of content free for the public to be able to just, give this as a gift for the good of the larger church. Um, we need sponsors. So if you yourself personally, or your church, or you're part of an organization that would like to be a sponsor, There'll be information about all of that when we launch on our website, June the 1st. You also could just send us an email if you're interested in that. You could send that to info@firebrandmag.com. And thanks for your partnership in helping us to offer this to the church. And I guess I would just want to close with this one thought. I was messaging with David and a few others the other day, and it just hit me. We didn't, I don't think, on purpose choose June the 1st for a real spiritual reason. It was more of a just practically timeline and kind of stuff. But I realized the other day, and I don't think it's an accident, that Firebrand's launching the day after Pentecost. And I really believe that God is stirring his church right now, and in some cases bringing us to the end of ourselves so that he can pour out his Spirit and his truth in a fresh way for the sake of a world that desperately needs it. And so we're praying. I know David's heart and my heart. We're praying that Firebrand could be one catalyst to that end. And thanks for joining us today and for tuning in, and watch for lots more in the future. This is just the start, and so we'll be sharing more as time goes on. David, anything else you want to share?
No, this is great, Matt. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you again soon.
God bless.